Here's Brody Brazil.
Switching gears here to something that's a lot more important than sports. And it's one thing for individuals or athletes to, speak up and speak out for social justice. But you and your family members, going generations back, you have actually lived it. And I guess beginning with your grandparents, one of which who worked with Martin Luther King Jr., the other who actually marched in Selma, Alabama. Is that where it starts? And first off, as we kind of paint this picture, what can you tell me about your grandparents and their influence?
Yeah, a huge influence for me. I was, really raised in that kind of environment. My grandparents really, sacrificed a lot of, what they had and tried to help other people around them. And I think it's kind of a unique perspective. I don't know if a lot of people in the hockey world were necessarily raised like that. So right. I think that for me to be able to kind of be in an environment where people, are looking up to you and seeing kind of, do you have anything to say, and trying to, spread what I know and how I was raised, to, shed light on issues that, might not get shed enough light on in this sport.
Yeah. And to your point, let's be brutally honest. Most people in hockey look just like you and me. And when they find out you're a kid from Oregon, like, what do you know about this? And in reality, you know a lot. And a lot of it goes to your brother, Kevin, who was adopted into your family. Kevin's Black. And I'm sure you learned a lot of different things that you never would have without him in your life. What was it like to have Kevin growing up as a sibling?
Yeah, it was awesome. I think that we really, embraced him when he was adopted into our family, and just being able to sit there and talk to him about some of the experiences he's had kind of really opens my eyes. Again, like you said, I haven't faced half the things that he's faced in his life just because the color of his skin, which isn't fair.
Right.
So just to be able to talk and say, hey, get a little perspective of what it's like. We're obviously very close, and again, he's had some things happen and come up in his life that shouldn't have happened. And being able to kind of be someone he can talk to is something I cherish.
Does it start with just most people aren't aware because, to your point, it's never impacted them? And is part of what you want to do and being out there and spreading, your messages that you're just asking people to look at this before you decide on how you're going to feel, what you're going to do, just understand that you don't understand. Is that it?
Yeah, really well said. I think that a lot of times people have the blinders on when it comes to things that don't affect them.
Yeah.
When in reality, the people who aren't affected sometimes have the most influence on making that change. So for me, it's how can I influence someone who watches hockey and doesn't maybe understand that there are, social justice issues out there. And if I can be an avenue to just point them in the direction of, hey, maybe have a conversation with your kids who are going to school with all different, ethnicities and people, and how can you be more inclusive? That's kind of what I've just been trying to do. If
it weren't for your brother Kevin, and if it weren't for your grandparents, do you think you would have been exposed? Do you think you otherwise would be who you are without them?
No. And I think that's a huge problem, right? Because I'm pretty unique in that aspect.
Yeah.
So I looking at, my understanding and saying, hey, there's going to be a whole lot of people out here who don't have this.
Right.
So how can we have more education in schools? How can we have more family talks? Because I think kids growing up are heavily influenced by their parents, and why wouldn't you be, right? So, having parents and people who are in the leadership position in their family have good conversations.
These are your positions, but these are also your passions, right? Like you're passionate about spreading this message and making sure that it's out there either on social media, or I know you've been a part of certain marches, but when you make these statements, what is the type of feedback that you do get? And I would hope mostly positive, maybe some nothing, maybe even some negative, but what are the types of things that you hear in return?
It's all over the place, really. There's a ton of positive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a ton of negative. And I remember having a conversation with my family about the negative. And, sometimes when the negative happens, it can actually be a learning lesson for those around that. It can kind of be like a sore thumb, right? You kind of check the sore thumb out a little bit more. So
right.
We've had talks that, hey, maybe if somebody's very upset with this and sharing this, hopefully they're going to do a little bit of research into what we're trying to share.
Yeah. To your point, it might be awkward, maybe painful, but there can be something taken away from it. It can be an experience. Hey, last thing on this, and just relating to diversity and inclusivity, in the last handful of years, the NHL and the hockey community, it has started to talk the talk. I'll say that. Do you think that they're walking the walk yet, or they could do a little bit better at that, or there's still a little bit of work to be done there?
Yeah, I think there's always still work to be done. I think they're taking positive steps in the right direction, which is important for anyone who's trying to, bring this more into the limelight. So I think it starts with us players, it starts with coaches, it starts with management, and how can we share our knowledge with the next generation so things can get even better.